President Cyril Ramaphosa says government is seriously considering introducing a basic income grant. It followed a week of violent protests, looting and rioting in the country. Let's discuss how this will help the most vulnerable with Duma Gqubule from the Center for Economic Development and Transformation. Duma, thank you so much for making time. So when I heard the president say the basic income grant is being given serious consideration, I thought, how long does the ANC need to give this consideration? It's been a serious consideration for years now, but no movement.
Okay, let me just give some background, Chairman. Thank you for the invite. The President has had 4 opportunities to tell us what the economic response to this crisis will be. To Sunday and Monday the previous week, Friday in the address, and also yesterday in the ANC webinar debate with civil society activists. So what I should say is that the majority of civil society activists yesterday called for a basic income grant, and the government was the president was put under pressure to come up with an answer. Now, there is no excuse not to have a basic income grant. There is a proliferation of studies that show how this can be financed. The government is sitting on these studies, and all of them show that if there was the political will, the government can implement the basic income grant tomorrow. The economy, there is no way out of this crisis except to inject new money into the economy, into the hands of the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable in society. We're talking about a phased implementation of the basic income grant. We've got 3 poverty lines in South Africa. The first year, it must be at the food poverty line of 585 Rand. The second year, it must be at the lower poverty line of about 840. And then the third year, it must be at the upper poverty line of 1,268. These must all be indexed according to inflation. And there is no shortage of proposals that explain how this can be done. I don't agree with some of these proposals, but I agree with some of them. But the government can't say that it doesn't know what to do. I think the problem here, Clement, is that if you have to implement the basic income grant, it means a departure from the austerity policies of the government. And I think the president is not ready to make that leap. And there's another compromise solution that has been proposed by civil society, is that implement the social relief of distress grant starting in August at the upper poverty line of 585 Rand a month, and that would go to about, I think, 6 to 7 million people. It costs about 3 billion rands a month until the end of the year. That's 24 billion rands. It would not really affect the government's fiscal framework to implement this, but it would provide massive relief to the people at the bottom, the people who need it the most.
Is there money for such a grant, Duma? Can government afford it when they can't even extend the 350 unemployment grant by a couple of months?
Okay, there's 2 things I have to explain. First of all, in terms of this grant is not an isolated fix for all the problems in our society. We need a bigger stimulus package for this. But now, I've provided 11 options and many forums as to how to finance this biggest fiscal stimulus, because the basic income grant is probably one of the smaller elements of that fiscal stimulus. Now, in terms of the big itself, people must remember that if the government injects this money into the economy, most of the money comes back to the government in forms of various forms of taxes. It is income in the hands of the private sector, where you go and you buy in the local communities, in the local. So the money comes back to the government, and people need to understand that. Right now, we have to put money into the hands of the people. But there are many options in terms of funding it. I have a different view to many people. I say we don't need to fund it initially, because a lot of the money will come back. But many other proposals say we can increase taxes on the wealthy, idle money, and so forth. So there is no excuse. There is no excuse for the government not to implement it here. Right now, I don't care how it's implemented, whether it's implemented the way I think should be done, or it's implemented where there will be increased taxes. I don't care. We must implement this basic income grant.
So what is the problem then? You've spoken about the several options that you've put on the table. Is the problem then political will? Because my understanding is the ANC has done work into the feasibility of such a fund, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I imagine a plan and a report on feasibility would deal with even issues of funding. So if a feasibility study has been done and there have been other proposals from people like you on how we can do this. Why is there still no movement?
I think it's stuck at National Treasury. I think that within the ANC, there's consensus amongst the majority of the people that this has to be implemented. The Social Development Minister, Lindile Zulu, is leading the charge in terms of the campaign at the political level for this basic income grant. So I think it's stuck at National Treasury. And at some point, you need someone higher than National Treasury, the president, to say, listen, man, we want this thing to happen. We don't care how it happens. It must happen. But I must tell South Africans that the numbers that we're talking about are not going to bust the bank, but they will make a big difference to the lives of millions of South Africans. If we introduce the social relief of distress grant, as I said, until the end of the fiscal year, it is not a lot of money in terms of the budget. You don't even have to raise new taxes for it, It's just, you just make a little bit of adjustment to the budget and you implement it starting in August. I'm hearing that it will be implemented in August, probably at the 350 again.